Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I'm excited today for my conversation. My new friend, Kia Miner, who helps six-figure females achieve financial wellness. She believes women should be able to focus their energies on their families, on their businesses, or any of the areas of their life that matter most to them. She positions them to live, give, and enjoy their life with purpose and financial confidence. Welcome to the show today, Kia.
Thank you for having me, Felina. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to share your story. You have a really I don't want to say unusual career path, but you definitely have stepped into something new in the last couple of years. But let's go back. I know you're a native New Yorker, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome. And still up there in the Northeast, although you've migrated up to Mass.
Yep.
Talk about the early choices you made as far as career and education.
Yeah, sure. So I, like you said, originally from New York City, and I ended up finishing out my younger school years in, in Martha's Vineyard. And we were fortunate enough to have grandparents that owned a house there. And when my parents split up, we moved out there, and I finished middle school and high school out there. So once I graduated, I was super into basketball. That was the only thing I cared about. I didn't want to do anything else but play basketball. So that was really how I made my choice to go to college. And I ended up at Framingham State there, studying education, was sure I was going to be a teacher, loved everything about teaching. And then once I graduated, I realized, although I loved it, it wasn't really for me in the way that I thought it was.
Mm.
And
so I want to dial into this, because this is you taught basketball, you were a coach, you were a teacher. I want to get into, what did you teach? What was that journey like for you? But before we do, Martha's Vineyard has been on my bucket list for so long, and it's absurd that I've never been there. What was it like, growing up there? It must have been amazing.
Yeah, so that is definitely the popular opinion, and it's only 50% wrong and 50% right. And I say that because what most people that don't live there about the vineyard is the summertime, right? And summertime is amazing. It's awesome. I have so many fond memories. So probably some of the best memories being Martha's Vineyard summer. And then exact opposite, some of my worst memories, unfortunately, being the wintertime. And, they can be as simple as just only having things open till 5 o'clock at night, or, as drastic as being the only person of color, child of color, even young girl of color in my class, and dealing with the struggles that came with that. But definitely always highly recommend taking a trip there in the summertime. It's unmatched in my opinion.
Awesome. Yeah, I can imagine. You definitely painted a good picture for me there. So, all right. So you got the heck out of Martha's Vineyard.
Yes.
Talk about initially what you taught, and then talk about your time coaching.
Yeah. So I, straight out of school, was working for a behavioral treatment center for boys. And they had issues spanning from, maybe not having a proper home life. Maybe they were adopted and were waiting to find their forever home, all the way to having mental health diagnoses and everything in between. And that was definitely a eye-opening experience. It made me become much more patient, and much more aware of how to communicate with, my students, but especially with everybody else, because you really just never know what somebody else has going on. And when you're dealing with students that don't know how to properly express themselves, it's so important for you to pick up on the cues the right way, say the thing the right way. So it really prepared me for my next job as a coach, because, even though you're dealing with college kids, they're still kids. And to be honest, I was a kid myself, right? I got my first job. I was, I think, 23. So I'm only a couple of years older than the kids I'm coaching. But there's so many nuances to having conversations with young people and young folks that really takes some education and some prowess. So I was really happy to see all of the skills that I had learned in this difficult classroom, being able to translate seamlessly onto the court. And I had an amazing time learning, teaching and playing. Back then I was just still fresh out of college. So I loved jumping into practices and showing them, making them feel a little bad about themselves, but also teaching them at the same time,
Wow, that must have been an amazing experience. And you continued coaching. Let's go flip over to the classroom. What did you teach?
Yeah, so I was in an English classroom when I was teaching the high school age students. And then I did a lot of actual basketball training on the side. So really teaching the mindset of the game, the X's and O's of the game, understanding how to read and react. And that was one of my favorite things to do, because I realized as a player, there were a lot of things I knew how to do innately, but I never knew the why behind it. So that was something that was really important to me once I became a coach, making sure that all my players not only knew how to play the game, but knew why they were doing what they were doing, because that to me creates, a repeatable process or a habit. And therefore allows you to become a better player all in all when you have good habits and you know why you're doing what you need to do. Because in tough situations, when you can't have your coach tell you, it almost muscle memory kicks in and the knowledge kicks in and kind of takes you through your flow state to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And I see that you also coached at Babson College. That must have been an amazing experience.
Yeah, Babson was my last school. I was there for 4 years. And my first year was the best year because we won a championship. And it was like a whirlwind. I got there, integrated myself with the team and on the road, playing different schools. And the year before I got in there, they lost in the championship. So everybody there was just super determined to make sure that the same thing didn't happen again. And it was cool from a coach's perspective, because that's what you wish all of your players had in terms of mentality, like making sure oh no, not me, not ever again. That's, I think, a coach's dream, we salivate at that. So it was cool to walk into that in the first year and just have them all embody what competition really meant.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask a question around what you saw there at Babson related to Title VII. This is a hot topic, right? We see a lot of programs where women don't get the same funding, don't get the same attention, all the way from, grade school, all the way up to professional sports, of course.
Yeah.
What did you see when you were there at Babson?
So Title IX is
Title IX. Sorry, I'm like making up my own title over here. Sorry,
it's okay.
I'm curious what Title VII is. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, once you said it, I was like, I'm going to let her keep talking because I'm sure I know what she's talking about.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's early here in California. My coffee hasn't kicked in yet.
Listen, no apologies necessary, Felina.
Title IX. Thank you.
Yes, but Title IX is always a hot topic. Honestly, I would say at Babson they did a pretty good job of not having that be a concern, but I think it really related to the fact that even though it was a small school, they really put a lot of emphasis on the success of their athletic. So therefore, I would say sometimes when you look at colleges, the men's teams are automatically getting the better of because they're doing better. Yeah. Where it was really sort of 50-50, like the basketball team, both men and women were always doing really well. And the soccer team's always doing really well. So it was really easy to make sure that we were all getting equal opportunities, equal swag. And the administration, did a really good job of educating others about that. So I would say we were lucky to not really have to deal with any Title IX issues, but around the same time, you talk about the bigger schools, Division I schools, and how the difference and it's timely, right? Because it's about to be March Madness, how the difference in the March Madness tournaments are for the men and women. So that's always a huge debate for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get into your transition.
Yeah.
You're taking flight as an entrepreneur and stepping into self-employment. So you left Babson in August 2020. We all know what was going on at that time. It must have been a challenging time. I mean, right? Like we just, everybody was still in pretty heavy lockdown at that point. What was the decision to leave teaching and coaching and go into financial services?
It's a great question, Felina. And you're right. In the intro, you said an unusual path. I don't disagree. I do believe it's an unusual path, but it's one that I own. Sometimes the best things come from unusual stuff, right?
Absolutely.
But I would say the biggest trigger for me was that I had unfortunately lost my mom in July. She went into the hospital July 1st, was diagnosed with lung cancer, and we lost her July 26th.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was really, really sudden and difficult, for sure. But I realized even really before that although coaching, I would say, is my first love. I will always be a coach. I will always be involved in coaching basketball, whether it's on the side or full time. But the lifestyle that it forces you to take on wasn't a lifestyle that I wanted to live anymore. And COVID was really what showed me that, like if it wasn't COVID, I wouldn't have been able to be by my mom's side every day at that hospital, because I would have had to go see players. I would have had to be at games. I would have had to, there are just so many things that would have needed to be done that I would have had to find a way around, where, of course, entrepreneurship is difficult and it makes you question yourself sometimes. But at the end of the day, we all entrepreneurs know that the one thing that's always afforded to us is freedom of choice. And that's something that I never thought I was worthy enough of having, I will say, because I always thought being an entrepreneur took a certain type of person, and I didn't think I was that type of person. But with all of the changes happening, I just felt like it was the right time to take a chance, and sometimes through tragedy comes the greatest triumph. And I was like, you know what? I know I want to do something different. So I think this is the step, and this is the leap. And for me, finance has always been connected to my world, for better or for worse. We didn't grow up with a lot. And I've always tried to make sure I managed what I did have, so that I was never in a situation where I couldn't do what needed to be done for myself, especially as a young adult. So it just kind of all intertwined itself, putting me in a position to help people like me, people that don't have anybody advocating for themselves. And then also really providing the education to make sure that they can be the person that they want to be in this world, no matter what they're doing or who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there somebody in your life that kind of opened up this door for you, or is it something you'd been thinking about for a while?
Yeah, I had a colleague. He was a former Division I head coach, and he actually now is back to coaching. But at the time, he was one of the directors at the firm that I got hired for. And he and I had a conversation, and he said, based on everything that you're talking about, I really think this could be a good fit for you. And I said, I don't know, I get all the perks and, the potential, but I'm just not sure if it's for me. And he said, just let me put you on the interview list. And if at any point you're like, no, Eric, this isn't for me, then we'll go back to the drawing board. I'll introduce you to some coaches for you to have an interview. And I went through the process, and every time I spoke to somebody else, from the president of the company to, other self-employed financial people like myself, everybody always had such great things to say. And it just continued to move me to the place where I was like, I got to try this. I got to try this and see what happens. And 3 years later, I'm still here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and very different, not only being in a different industry, but, you are, I'm sure, out and about doing lots of networking. It's I don't want to call it sales, because it's not necessarily that, it's relationship building, but very different than what you were doing before.
Yeah, definitely. And different and similar, right? I will say the similarity is the recruiting part. When I was coaching, I feel like that was a direct translation to, the networking, the relationship building, awesome. Because I'm, convincing players that they need to come and play for me, where now I'm talking to people and telling them how I can help them, and hoping that what I say to them matters enough for them to give me a chance to work with them, because I know I can bring value to them. But definitely, Felina, to your point, very different in all other aspects. Like even just, I'm used to wearing sweats all day, every day. So I was like, I gotta go get my wardrobe different and make sure I look like a professional adult.
And how has it been going the last couple of years?
It's been a roller coaster, to say the least. And mostly because right after 6 months after I started the job, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So, I have a wonderful baby boy. But anybody that has children knows that just being a parent is enough. And then learning how to be an entrepreneur at the same time is like banging your head against the wall. So it's learning two major things at the same time has, of course, its own challenges, but I'm grateful to be able to be in that position, right? I'm grateful to be able to take the time I need to focus on balancing motherhood and balancing entrepreneurship and being a business owner, and learning through the failures, right? Failing forward, as they say, and seeing the return on investment in terms of the hours that I'm putting in, the conversations that I'm having, especially coming into my third year. I'm really excited to see a complete change in terms of the seeds that you plant. I feel like I planted a lot of seeds my first 2 years, and I'm starting to finally see not just the little leaves, but like maybe, an actual bush, maybe a shrub, maybe a tree,
A sprout coming through the crack in the sidewalk.
Exactly.
Fantastic. And you do both life insurance and money management, is that right? Or
yeah. Definitely run the gamut of options and services to offer people. Life insurance is probably one of the biggest, because I think it's definitely been a hot topic in the last couple of years. People, even if they don't know what it is, they know that it might be something they should be talking about. But disability insurance is one of those kind of under the table things that people have heard, but they think maybe it's not for them. But my main focus in terms of the money management side is really making sure people understand what their money is doing and how they can keep more of it on their balance sheet, right? And then everything else after that, right? Like, let's plan for right now, and let's make sure that plan also is able to withstand the laters and also the futures, but making sure that we're pivoting as things change, because I think one of the things that falls short with some planners and people in the financial world is that they're focused on how they can help you now and how they can, unfortunately, sometimes fill their pockets. And sometimes, I would say most of the time, there's a significant conflict there, right? Because what you need might not be what's going to make said person the most money. But if you really have the best interest of your client at heart, then your plan will really be able to translate and transmute to something that allows them to continue to build out their financial world while feeling good about the steps that they're taking.
Absolutely. And I know you just launched a podcast too.
Yeah.
As if motherhood and entrepreneurship weren't enough. Come on, Kia.
Right. I know, chill out, right?
No. I'm right there with you. I got like 10 hats as well.
Yes, I think as women, whether we want to or not, there are always multiple hats sitting on top of our head, right?
Yeah.
But the podcast actually was a wonderful surprise. And Cortland, my co-host, she came to me and said, I think I'm going to do a podcast, and this might sound crazy, but I want a co-host, and I want that co-host to be you. What do you think? And I was like, yeah, why not? She's like, really? That's it? That was easy. It's like, yeah, it's never something that I thought about, but I love to talk and I love, to learn about people. So why not? Like, let's try it on for size. And we launched our first episode February 22nd of this year. And it's been great. It's been, and it's a lot of work, but it's so amazing and so cool to meet new people and hear about their stories and, stay connected. And that's my favorite part, like really learning and hearing about the way in which other people move through the world and their challenges and their triumphs and being able to be, their cheerleader as they continue through.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the name of the podcast and what is the theme?
The name of the podcast is called Fearless Narratives, and we highlight female creatives and entrepreneurs and learn more about their story and try to give them some more visibility.
Awesome. That's great. I love it. Well, we'll definitely link that when we post this. And if folks want to reach out to you, they want to follow you, what is the best way for them to do that?
I would say my Instagram is where I'm most active, which is Money Matters with Kia. Comment, message. That's the easiest way for me to get back to people. And then, LinkedIn is always an easy one. And that's just my first name, Kia Miner.
Awesome. I love it. Kia, it's been really a pleasure getting to know you.
Same, Felina. Again, thank you so much for having me. It was such a good time.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.